Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Gutierrez. I'm the writer and the author of the book, Patriots from the Barrio. It's the true story of Company E in the 141st Infantry. Company E was the only all-Mexican-American U.S. Army unit in World War II. An original Texas National Guard unit out of El Paso, Texas, there's going to be a new monument being placed in downtown El Paso, honoring these men of Company E. And I thought it'd be interesting for our followers to have a few people on this little chat that are responsible for seeing that monument going up. And I'll introduce my guests, and I'll have them introduce themselves one at a time. And let's start with Julio. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're connected to this new memorial in downtown El Paso, Texas.
My name is Julio Sanchez de Alba. I'm the sculptor here in El Paso for the past 19 years. And in 2008, I was approached by the city. We talk about making a monument for the Company E. That was the first time that I heard about Company E. But as a local here and I living in this community for so long, I got to appreciate the culture. And obviously, I got very interested, and I start to investigate and find out details about Company E. Locally at that time, we have 4 survivors, and I was able to interview personally for the monument, and that's how we come out with the bas relief that is now on Delta Street here in El Paso. That bas relief is 14 feet long, 8 feet tall, and depicts the soldiers of the Company E crossing Rapid River in 1944.
Awesome. And Jaime.
Yes.
If you could just introduce yourself and how you've helped to see that this memorial gets placed in downtown El Paso.
Thank you, Dave. My name is Jaime Barceleau, born and raised here in El Paso, retired lieutenant colonel from the Army Reserves, and active in a number of different civic activities here in El Paso. Curiously, in the early 80s, I was at a holiday function, and this gentleman learned that I was a young second lieutenant, and he hung on to me and told me a story that to me was incredulous. I was an unwilling listener, but a polite listener. And he was tipsy, and nobody else wanted to listen to him. And he told me a war story. It turned out Jesus Luis Medina was telling me a true story. Uncle Louis, he was. And years later, 30-something years later, I'm doing some research on behalf of Community en Acción, a local civic organization that got behind the monument that's being built today. And as I was doing my research, I came across a PowerPoint photo presentation that had Jesus Luis Medina. And at that point, I only knew him as Uncle Louis. And I said, goodness gracious, I flashed back to that event and the Rapido River. And that was my personal involvement with it.
Well, thank you both for joining us here on this little chat about the new memorial. So you briefly, Julio, briefly talked about the first memorial monument that you were involved with, and I'd like to go and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well,
let me pull this up.
That's the first. That's the first monument. Yeah, it's a bas relief, like I mentioned. That's depicting the moment that they are ready to cross Rio Rapid. Some of them are already crossing on the river, and some of them, as you could see, they already, unfortunately, fell to the enemy fire. However, that monument, I got some feedback from people that went to see the inauguration, and they they start to mention that they wanted something, more appropriate for that event, which I also got to understand. This was a very, very important moment for Mexican Americans, especially that were part of this conflict, and they willingly, enlisted in the army to go fight for this country. And to me, that was a point of more interest. And then we started to talk, and people wanted to move the monument to a more focal point here in El Paso, because Delta Street is one of the sidewalks that very seldom people goes by. So nobody has the opportunity to observe it until they really make a point. So the people interested, some of the veterans, etc., wanted to have more central point, and they asked me if we could move this monument, for which I told them, yes, it's possible. And we've been talking back and forth for almost 10 years. A lot of talk, a lot of city reps were involved, but nothing was really done until in the past 2 years, I will say. I was approached again by the city, being that I made the first monument, and they asked me if I could, that we're gonna make, they have a commitment to make a second monument. And for this, obviously, now I was way better prepared, because I knew the events, I knew the history, and I read and I heard a lot about it. So I thought that if we need to honor Mexican Americans on this event that unfortunately was part of this horrendous war, and not very successful event, that the action of the 20th of January in 1944. Nevertheless, it depicts the tremendous courage, the patriotism that these soldiers have, and on the willingness to fight and die for the country. So I thought that for this situation, we needed to make a monument, but it had to be a monument that shows that, like anywhere else where you go, I have traveled extensively in southern. I'm from Bolivia, and if we need to be proud of something in Bolivia, it's about our monuments that really show the history in a magnificent, monumental way, And I did not see this around me here in El Paso, or very seldom, unless you are in big cities. But in El Paso, we don't have a monument that really shows the history, the rich history that El Paso has. And I thought that we need something very appropriate. And back and forth, long story behind it, I was able, with the support of the community in action, to push for larger, proper monument, which is what we are depicting now, and which I am working on right now.
Excellent, excellent. And for those who are unfamiliar with this action, the first monument that's over near Delta, on Delta Street, it's depicting Company E crossing the Rapido River in January of 1944. In a span of 48 hours, the 36th Division would lose nearly 2,000 men in its attempt to cross the Rapido River. Company E, made up entirely of Mexican Americans, crossed the Rapido River with about 154 men in January of 1944. During that crossing, or after that crossing, I should say, only 27 men returned back to the unit. So this monument here on Delta is depicting the actual crossing of the Rapido River. And it's a two-sided monument. This is the one side of it. And on the other side is a plaque that tells the story of the Rapido River crossing, and panels of all of the men that were part of Company E. So it's a very beautiful monument. I've obviously been there myself and have seen it. And now let's talk a little bit about the new monument. Now here's a photo, and I'll let you go ahead and depict on what we're seeing here, Julio.
Okay, in the first monument, of course, we see in the moment that they were starting to cross the river and giving the signals to cross the river. In this one, I wanted to pick the moment that they were already in the other side. They really crossed the river and they are climbing now the side of the river. However, they are under heavy fire. And you could see one of the soldiers pulling a wounded one that got, wounded when they were crossing it. He was pulling up the hill. He was pulling him up while he's being covered by a couple of his friends. Meanwhile, the person standing up is showing them Monte Cassino. That's the direction that they were going. They needed to get that point, and they all are working together to achieve that objective, and that's what I intend for the people that sees the monument to getting its hands how difficult, how unsurmountable was this task.
Yeah, excellent. Can you talk a little bit about on this side of the monument and the arrowheads?
Okay, one of the important things for me with the monument, the monument is all fine and dandy, but I think just like in the previous monument, embedding the names on granite on the soldiers is fine, but it's just a list of names. On this case, I thought that will be best if we honor everyone and each one of the members that would participate in that event, to honor them with individual plaques. This will be individual bronze plaques. Right now we have 174 total names that participate, left El Paso and went all the way in the campaign to free Italy and France. So it's going to be 174 plaques depicting, each one depicting the names of every soldier that participate in that event. And obviously on top, the one that is in blue will be colored. It shows the T-patch that the soldiers had on the shoulders.
Excellent. And here's the front part of the new monument. And can you talk a little bit about where is this monument? Where are they going to be able to find this monument in El Paso?
Well, again, after so many years of conversations, this monument, I have the pleasure and the honor to let everybody know that it's going to be in the central point of El Paso, Texas, right in front of the History Museum, across from the ballpark, in a very well lit place. And it's going to be awesome. I can't wait for the inauguration date. It's going to be fantastic.
So what was the start date for you? What was the date that you first started actually putting this memorial together?
Well, this started about 2 years ago when I was first approached with the monument, and I started to make, the sketches and gather more resources, more data, more insight into all this. And but pandemic, of course, puts in hold, because I envisioned that by now we should have already the room up and going. However, last year in February, I was stopped. March, the city told me, Julio, everything is, we cannot move forward. So
right.
Whatever you have done, just please stop it, cold turkey. And it was difficult for me because at that point, I already did the sculpting part. And now I needed to move to molding part, because a bronze monument takes 34 steps from the beginning that I start sculpting until I finish the bronze. It takes 34 steps, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop it simple because it's clay. It was very fragile, and storing this, we just get destroyed. So against all odds, and in the midst of the pandemic, my crew also needed work, demanded work. We were waiting for this. So we decided to go ahead. And I'm happy to tell you that the monument, the bronze part, the soldiers, the armament, everything that is in bronze is 85–90% ready.
Wow.
We just need to finalize now. Once the city finally gave me the go ahead about a month ago, and finally the last part was the names that Jaime will talk about it. That was accepted last week, complete 174 names. So now will be up to the city to finish with the construction of the base, which they need to make whatever it is underneath of the monument. On the floor. The city is going to do that part, and immediately the city finished that. In the matter of a month, I could just put the base and set the monument the way that should be, the way that you are looking now.
Well, just looking at the little replica here, I mean, I think it's going to be an outstanding monument in honor of the men of Company E. So you guys have done an excellent job. Jaime, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Comunidad Acción, who was really important in making sure that this gets done.
Community in Acción is a civic group of local Latino leaders, and it's something that's just particular to El Paso. And so there was a group of veterans, old World War II, Vietnam, Korean War veterans, who approached one of our members, Richard Castro, and were sharing with him the story of Company E. And we recognized then that it was important to recognize and to honor and to memorialize the effort that these soldiers had done. And me being a veteran, I was asked to be a part of that committee. And when we visited the site on Delta Drive, there's a recreation center right there. There's a senior citizen right there. There's a city softball field, all right there. And I have had occasion to visit the senior center, not because I was old, but because I was there doing business. And the recreation center, my daughter played basketball in that rec center. And that monument never caught my eye.
Wow.
And one of the veterans, actually several of the veterans, had said the same thing. It's there. Nobody knows it's there. Nobody sees it. So if we wanted to recognize and honor and memorialize it, that location was not a good place for it. Now, once we started doing our research, we realized the magnitude of the effort and the sacrifice that the men of Company E had put into. And you all talk about crossing the Rápido River, and I say it was all about liberating Rome. So the effort that they put liberating Rome and the Rápido River was certainly a decisive engagement in that mission. Then I said the value of this effort needs a much better, a much more visible memorial. And so as Julio was talking about it, there's a little square downtown. It's called Cleveland Square. It's across the street east of the main entrance to the ballpark. It's immediately south of the main entrance of the El Paso History Museum. It's immediately west of the El Paso Public Library. So it's going to have visibility. It's going to be the largest monument downtown.
Oh, wow.
So once we look at that, then we can say we can be proud of these soldiers. By my count, there's 74 of those soldiers, 174 that deployed from Massachusetts to North Africa and then to the beachhead in Salerno, Italy. 174 soldiers, and of those, 74 are from El Paso. And of those 74, the overwhelming majority are from what we call the Segundo Barrio, or the south side of El Paso, right, which is right immediately south of where the monument is going to be. So that's a great location to memorialize what these soldiers did for their country. Julio mentioned that they were volunteers. Now, I, as a soldier, understand that the National Guard, this was Company E of the 141st Infantry Regiment, the 36th Infantry Division of the Texas National Guard. The National Guard does not draft. Those who are in the National Guard were there voluntarily, and they enlisted knowing that the winds of war were howling in Europe.
Right.
And enlisted.
And still enlisted, right?
That's correct. And so you look at these guys that said, we're going to defend our country. And as you were talking about the number of casualties and the POWs that were captured and the folks that got injured and had to be pulled away from the front lines, and of course the killed in action, the casualties for the 36th Division were high. The 141st Infantry Regiment were very high, but these guys soldiered on. One of our native sons, and this baseball cap, Gabriel Navarrete was a soldier in the unit. And when the first sergeant Luna, was told that he was too old to deploy into the combat zone, Gabriel Navarrete was promoted to the company first sergeant. And then he was given a field promotion to lieutenant. And he conducted the first recon across the Rapido River. And he tested out the enemy lines and found out that they were heavily fortified. They were dug in, they were well armed, they had plenty of ammunition. And the route from the south side of the river going north was sloggy, it was wet, the river was cold, it was rushing. So he knew the obstacles that lay before them. They crossed the Rapido River. He was wounded. He was wounded 7 times, earned 4 Purple Hearts. And Captain John Chapin, who had been the commander since their days here in El Paso, was killed in action during that engagement. And Gabriel Navarrete was promoted to the company commander.
Right.
And eventually he had to redeploy home because of his wounds. But when we started doing the research on how we identify the soldiers on the monument, we learned that the monument on Delta Street had 123 names, and it was short.
Yeah.
And so I consulted with you. I consulted with various other folks. I have a roster of the 36th Infantry Division for their World War II period deployment. And so I find Company E, and I went through all of there and identified all those who were from El Paso and all of those who were killed in action. And even from that roster, as you told me, there was a couple of names that were missing.
Right.
And so we had the 36th Infantry roster. We had a roster of the World War II casualties from El Paso County. We had the roster that was donated to Chapin High School by Chapin's, I believe, by his widow, that had the soldiers who deployed from Camp Edward, Massachusetts in April 1943 to North Africa. And then there was some internet sites, for whatever reason, Abner Carrasco didn't make it onto several of these rosters, but we found him on the Voces from the UT Austin website. So using all of these different sources, we came up with this list of 174 soldiers. We got that verified and rechecked through the military science department at UTEP. And the professor of military history, retired Lieutenant Colonel Turnipseed. So we did a lot of research to try and get these names correct. One of the important points is that there's a disclaimer on the 36th Infantry Division's roster that says these are based on the records that we had at the time.
Right.
And this is the best effort that we can put in to get accuracy. And so that's what we've done, and we hope that we're 100% accurate in those names.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys definitely did your research on it. I remember having conversations with both of you back and forth about the roster and the names, but yes.
One name, you gave us one name who was killed in action in Italy and is still interred in a military cemetery in Italy, who didn't make any of the rosters.
Right.
And thanks to your quick eye, you caught that one name.
Yeah, it's just it was important for us to make sure we don't forget him, because here's a person that actually was killed in action during the time in Italy. So yeah, especially those names are very front and center for me. These guys made the ultimate sacrifice, and they should not be forgotten. So yeah, kudos to you guys for all the research that you're done. I can't wait to see this. I'm definitely going to be in El Paso when we unveil this to the public. I think the city of El Paso will be very proud. And I think, Julio, you've done a great job of putting this together. And it really depicts the Mexican-American Company E crossing the Rapido River in January of 1944. So I think it's a monument that all Hispanics should be very proud of. El Paso has done a very good job of trying to keep the memory alive. Outside of El Paso, very few know about Company E. And I'm glad to see that they're going to continue to do that. We have Johnson High School. We have the monument. Jaime, you're wearing the baseball cap of Gabriel Navarrete, that captain Gabriel Navarrete Middle School. There's a new middle school that's going to be open, and I'm going to do a separate chat with Jaime later on, and we're going to go deeply into Captain Navarrete Middle School and how that became about. So I'm very proud to know that the city of El Paso is continuing to do this. Obviously, you guys know that my book was picked up in Hollywood. Hollywood is going to put together a television series based on the true story of Patriots from the Barrio. So hopefully Hollywood shines an even brighter light on this story. They already have, but we've got new announcements coming from Hollywood shortly, and I can't wait for all of that to happen as well.
If I may, because it's important, I think. I mentioned Community in Acción, and I mentioned Richard Castro because several veterans went to Richard and said, "Hey, this is what we're looking at, and we've got this idea." But then a number of us got together. Richard, Dan Olivas, which is our advocacy committee chairperson, was very active, and we included Ramiro Guzman, who's also a veteran, Rafael Adame, who's very active in a number of different civic and political circles, Ruben Chavez, who's a large civil engineer here in town, and Carmen Rene Jimenez, an architect. So we all started working, and when we got the first idea of where the city wanted to put this, we wanted something that was a little bit more visible. So we got Carmen Rene Jimenez, I'll just call her Rene. We got her active in the process, and she did pro bono the architectural work for the layout, and it'll be, again, a much more prominent, still in Cleveland Square, but it'll be a more prominent location where it can get the flexibility or the visibility that it deserves.
Right.
So there were a lot of folks with Dan Olivas and Richard Castro and Rafael Adame pushing with city leaders to get it funded, because the city has paid for this.
I see.
So they've got the contract with Julio to do the monument itself. Now the city's going to have to pay for all the site work because it is on a city park. So they're going to have to do all the site work to prepare it, and we're still looking at a few other things. We have a goal to raise an additional $35,000 to get the black granite facade. The original contract had 123 names. It's grown by 51 names, and each name, if you'll think about it in those terms, to memorialize each name, is approximately $230 for each plaque. So we've got a goal to raise an additional $35,000 to put that black granite facade and that individual plaque for each of those 174 names.
I'm glad you mentioned Dan Olivas, because obviously this project wouldn't even be getting off the ground without the work that he has done. in trying to get that that done. And I was hoping we can get Dan on here, because I'd love to talk to him and chat with him about this as well. But yeah, kudos to Dan and everybody in the organization. I'm running out of time here, but I want to thank you two for joining me today and talking about this memorial, this beautiful memorial that's going to be out in El Paso, Texas. And I hope you enjoyed our chat, and we'll see you soon. And hopefully we'll have updates from Julio later on. Stay tuned.
Certainly. Certainly. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Gracias.